Well, I'm here today with Ted Tate. He's a physical therapist with Temple Ergonomics in Appleton. And how you doing, Ted?
Oh, pretty good, Mike. Thanks for asking.
Oh, great. So the reason I wanted to touch base with you is because I know that the New Year started and everybody's trying to start with their New Year's resolutions. I know it's already a month into it. People are probably either continuing or they've probably given up on them. But I know that for myself, I wanted to start weightlifting. For instance, and to start back doing some jogging. But I'm coming from a point like I mean, even though I've been pretty active the last year, there were some things I probably could have done different. If I had asked you your advice. But I guess what I'm curious about is, I mean, is there anything specific that people should really watch out for when they're starting to, get back into exercise after being sedentary for a long period of time?
Well, the first thing that you need to do is if you've been sedentary, the first step is to get used to moving again. If you have any aches or pains, you want to, from a common sense perspective, yeah, it depends upon whether people want to take medications or not. If you don't want to take medications, as far as over the counter, some people are very they want to be very naturalistic with what they take. So if you're okay with ibuprofen or some kind of anti-inflammatory, if you have any pain in your joints, just say your Achilles tendon, or if you have pain in your shoulder or your knee is very common with people going up and down stairs, or in your back, you want to do things to try to alleviate those pain. Just the natural stuff at home, cold pack and some ibuprofen, and maybe start out with some stretching. Again, you can go a non medication route at all and just go with, if you want to go the naturopathic route, that they say that what is pineapple?
Hmm.
There is the anti-inflammatory in pineapple. And if you want to go with turmeric, anything that has turmeric in there, that's anti-inflammatory also. So you can do that. So make sure you get rid of those aches and pains. The other thing you want to do is try to avoid, let's say if you're lifting weights, some of the exercises that we do for physical therapy will look very foreign to people if they go into, let's say, a Planet Fitness or Gold's Gym. They just don't usually see therapeutic exercise bands laying around. And you don't see on somebody unless they are a baseball pitcher doing rotator cuff exercises. That's not typically what you see people do. You'll see them go in there and they'll either do a bench press or an overhead press or do pull downs. Nowadays they're really emphasizing using more of your body weight. So sometimes they'll use those straps. I can't remember what the names of the straps are. Straps that you can put and you can work different muscles at various angles. So if you are working your shoulder, particularly your shoulder complex, you want to try to avoid putting your hands where they are turning inward.
Oh, okay.
Because whenever you turn inward, or if you're going like this and you're going overhead, or if you're going out to the side with your hands pointed down or inward, you're closing the space in your shoulder. And so every time, especially if you add really heavy weight to that, you're pinching, you're
Hmm.
impinging.
Hmm.
If we have people doing a bench press, sometimes, you know, sometimes we'll have people take their elbows way behind their shoulders. So they get a really deep bench on the
Hmm.
bench press. They'll get their elbows behind them. And that actually causes impingement too. So
Hmm.
trying to not do anything where you're going to pinch the space is called the subacromial space. There's a portion here called the acromion, and underneath that acromion is where all your rotator cuff muscles run through. So that's for lifting weights. For running and moving and walking, what you want to do is see if what we do as therapists, I'll watch somebody walk and I'll see if something really, really just awkward jumps out. I'm sure all of us have seen the person down the street who's running down the street, or they run a really fast race, but they run ugly. They might be knock-kneed, where their feet are going out. They may be bent over a lot, at the waist when they're running. You have to look and see whether somebody's bouncing up and down when they're running, or if they're going straight. Some of the best runners don't bounce at all; they just glide.
Mm.
You want to see if people are turning their feet out when they walk, or in, pigeon-toed. So you want to look at things like that, because that will cause the joints to move in a way they're not designed, in a less optimal way. And typically if you have like a ball and a socket joint,
Mm.
or a hinge joint, you want everything working in there where it's moving evenly, and you have even contact pressure that's spread out, rather than, let's say, if my knuckle was part of it and I had just my knuckle rubbing on there, after a while,
Mm.
it'll cause pain.
Oh, okay.
So typically what I'll have people do is I'll have start out with non-weight bearing exercises first, like leg raises. We call them open chain exercises: leg raises, leg kicks, knee squeezes. If you're, and also the hip is very important. So you want to do something where you're pulling your knees apart, because that muscle, the gluteus medius on that side, really helps keep your knees aligned, so that when you're landing, your knees don't turn in. For your upper body, we want to see people start out with rotator cuff exercises, whether they have a band, or probably a stretchy band, or even you can use a free weight, and start out kind of light. And what you do is the rotator cuff muscles are basically their supportive muscles to hold the ball in the socket. So you can have really strong pectoralis major and minor. You can have really strong lats, and you can have really strong deltoids. But if you don't have a strong, there are 5 basic rotator cuff muscles: supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres major, teres minor, and subscapularis. Those all hold that in there.
Mm.
If you don't have good supportive muscles holding the joint together, having it move congruently, then you could be asking for problems.
Okay. Now, so I just wanted to ask, because, like, I'm probably not, there's probably a lot of people like me, where I don't have a straight spine, for instance. I mean, I have, my hips are probably, to a point where, I mean, yeah, there's probably a misalignment. I've had spinal issues. And so what I found was that I needed to have, like an extra insole in my shoe, and that seemed to help me, and I know that, there's orthotics and different, heel lifts and different things. But I mean, do you ever have people use those? Or,
I do. There's 2 ways to look at that. You can either correct somebody from the ground up, or you can correct them from the hips down.
hmm,
When you're correcting somebody from the ground up, it's typically a temporary solution. I hear many people say we have one leg longer than the other.
hmm,
Typically, people don't really have one leg longer than the other, unless you look at, let's say, X-rays or radiographs, and you measure and see literally whether one bone is longer than the other. That's very
okay.
rare in my experience. If you go from the top down, you can look to see how the muscles on one side of the body, the left leg, left lower extremity, right lower extremity, they work sort of like when you're like a drawstring.
Hmm.
If you have blinds in your house, if you pull up a blind and you pull it unequally, one side will snap up quicker than the other, and you have a crooked blind.
Hmm.
But that's the same thing that can happen with the muscles in your back and your hip. So what I usually do is I will go and I'll do what we call in physical therapy muscle energy techniques, where they're very gentle techniques, where we have a person contract and relax. And you have proprioceptors in your muscle that tell your muscle where to stay. So as that person is contracting and relaxing and breathing and stretching it, we're resetting the muscle, resetting the blind, so that it doesn't pull up on one side. I'll have them stand up, and I've had remarkable results with that.
Hmm. Hmm.
doing that. So I used to have the top-down philosophy. Occasionally, you have people with flat arches, so you'll
Hmm.
need to have the orthotics.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
Oh, okay. And the other thing I noticed too is that, for the upper body, like I had found actually, and I think I told you, my son, had me he put together my routine for me. And so initially, when I was doing, like, for instance, the bicep curls, with the
Hmm.
barbell, I ended up really severely hurting my wrist,
Hmm.
but what I found was that, like, using dumbbells, I have there's a range of motion with the dumbbell, that I
Hmm.
don't have with the barbell. So it's really interesting because as soon as I go to a barbell and I try to do it, I my wrist hurts. But I mean, is that what is common? I mean, is that
Well, there's a natural range of motion that people have. You can actually work your biceps long head, which is if you look at your arm, it's on the lateral border of your arm,
okay?
okay, up on the upper arm, and you have your medial biceps, which is on the inside of your arm.
Hmm.
The biceps long head, and you also have other muscles that people don't think about. The brachialis is
Hmm.
right here that helps rotate your
Hmm.
forearm.
Hmm.
So you have to look at that, the brachialis and the brachioradialis. Sorry, I'm losing big terms, but
Oh, that's all right.
it's the muscle that runs along the top of your forearm, if you
Hmm.
got in layman's terms,
Hmm.
and basically helps you swing a hammer.
Oh, okay.
The radialis it's a real long muscle.
Oh.
So when you're only in one plane of movement doing this, it doesn't allow for your joint where the radius and ulna are to rotate like they would
Oh.
normally do if you were doing a
Oh.
functional movement. So it's
Oh,
not as
okay.
functional.
Oh, I see.
So you're either going to be, in a real world, you're going to be using your arm with the thumb up to swing a hammer,
Hmm.
or you'll be turning it underneath to lift something up. But very rarely are you in that situation for a long period of time.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Oh, okay.
so,
Well, great.
but what I would actually recommend for people, the first thing you want to do when you're exercising is to get your tendons and ligaments where they are more vascular, they have more blood going to them, and get them where they're supple. Especially the older you get, um, 40, 50 and up, you want to probably start out with lightweight, probably 15 to 20 repetitions for the first couple of weeks. And then you may, after probably about, I know people are wanting to get going. I would say a month, but let's say after 2, 3 weeks of doing 15 to 20 repetitions, feel comfortable with it. Then you can move your repetitions down to 8 to 12 repetitions. You know,
Hmm.
Again, at this point, you're still going to build muscle. You're still going to strengthen your bones with the 15 to 20 repetitions, but just not as intensely. It may take you a little bit longer to get there, but you'll get there, and you'll get there with minimal injury that way. Because you can have what they call
Hmm.
micro trauma to the muscles. You can have micro trauma to the ligaments and the tendons. Remember, the ligaments hold bone to bone, tendons muscle to bone. So you want to be able to get there without injuring your pulleys. Your
Hmm.
muscles are very strong, but the pulleys sometimes can get injured, and you don't want to do that. So start out with lightweight, high repetition, 15 to 20 repetitions, and then work down, to 8 to 12, and another month, and then maybe by the third month, I'm just using this. It's not gospel. You don't have to
Hmm.
just go 4 weeks, but maybe
Sure.
get to the third month. I'm using it as an example.
Oh, okay.
Third month, you can go maybe 6 repetitions, 5, 6. There's no need to go under 5 or 6 repetitions unless you're trying to be a power lifter or trying to
Oh, okay.
compete for sports, athletic
Sure.
events.
Oh, okay. Well, now one of the things is I just saw this new video on your YouTube channel.
Hmm.
and I'm really way to go. I think it's great that you got your
Okay.
YouTube channel up. But one of the things that I saw in your video is that you had talked about these great athletes and how they've been, I think you mentioned a few. I'm gonna have people go to your channel and they can check, the curiosity factor. We won't say, but what was it that you said? Behind every great athlete, there's a what?
There's a good rehab professional.
Oh, okay. And that's what
And
you
I wouldn't like just
specialize in,
physical
right?
therapists. I didn't want to say just physical therapists because they're great athletic trainers,
Oh, okay,
you
sure.
know.
Yeah.
So I
But
just
you
happen to be a
help, you
physical.
work with people though, right? Who are, trying to recover from injuries or to prevent injury. What is your specialty?
Well, mine is I'm a movement specialist. It's funny. The core. I started out with the spine, and as I was seeing people move with the spine, I noticed that if you had the spine is like one big lever,
Mm,
and it's one big lever comprised of a lot of different little levers.
mm,
And I notice how the position of your head, the position of your shoulders, the position of your spine, all of that ties together. And what they're finding right now out with athletic training is that um, the core is probably one of the most important things to work.
mm,
So the reason we say that is you have certain characteristic movements. There are certain movements, reflexes. It's actually based on a reflex theory of when you're a kid that you have that base. There is a theory to saying that you have some primitive reflexes that build upon more complex reflexes to allow you to move. For example, if you're on a bus or
mm,
something that moves really fast,
mm,
you're going to reach your arms out and try to stabilize. But there's a lot of things that happen in a split second with your feet,
mm,
um, with your abdominals, with your buttocks area, glutes.
mm.
They all have to kick in just at the right timing in order to keep you from falling over because walking is a controlled
Oh, okay.
fall. So my specialty basically has been the spine, but I've expanded from that, and now I am taking some continuing education courses that are allowing me to combine the best of both worlds because I can combine the world of with physical therapy of injury prevention with athletic training and sports performance to see how all that works together. So my strength is thinking outside the box,
Mm.
not being confined to that. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. Well, I appreciate your time, Ted. I know you've had a long day, and thanks for being here. And so,
Yeah,
how
thanks for
can
having me.
people, if they need your help and they're in the Appleton Fox Valley area, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, you can go to www.templeergonomic.com, or you can call me at 920-427-0350. And you can set up an appointment and do a free screening, a free 15-minute screening. And I can typically see just in a very short period of time where a person might be bound up in
Oh,
their
okay,
body. And then we will work from there.
great.
So
Well, thank you. You have a
thanks,
great
Mike.
thanks. You have a great night.